Yeah. So you know, again, as I began reporting this, I became very frustrated that the way we looked at overwork was sort of an individual problem that an individual then had the responsibility solely to resolve. And so everybody's always looking for tips and tricks, right? Everybody wants, like, what's the one thing? What's the pill I can take? What's the magic button I can push to make things better for me? And I think that there are, so what I wanted to do is say, yes, there are absolutely strategies that you can work on that can be helpful. But one of the most important things, first of all, is awareness, and be aware that we're living in a society that would make these changes very difficult, that we might be working for organizations that would see any kind of effort to have more balanced or integrated life as sort of like, oh, you're slacking off, or you're not doing, you're not committed. So I want people to be aware of sort of the water that we're swimming in, and then honestly, to recognize that we can make change at the individual level. You can make change certainly you have power as an organizational leader, as a business leader, as a team leader, as a manager. But even on your team, if you don't have, responsibilities, you can work with others. You can find like-minded peers, and then, try experiments, and then have goodness burble out from there. And then we need to be thinking about cultural norms, policy leaders, policymakers. As you know, Maureen, and we've talked about this a lot, the United States is literally the only advanced economy that still does not have paid maternity leave. We're one of a handful that doesn't have paid parental leave. We don't have paid family leave, even though more and more of us have elder care, disability care responsibilities. We get sick ourselves. We are literally one of the few that doesn't have paid sick days. We do not have a policy regime that recognizes that work is important, but it is one part of our lives, and that we also have care, and that we need to find a way to harmonize those. That we can't just expect complete and utter devotion to work, or we will not have the next generation. You need to, you need work, and you need care. So that's why I like to think about change on those three levels. And oftentimes what I'll say is the individual tips and tricks, think about them as putting on an oxygen mask then, to give you time and space and bandwidth to help you begin to work, within your organization, to see what kind of changes you can bring about. And then can you work with a larger, within your community, within, an advocacy organization, to make to really work for some of those changes on a larger scale, to be part of those larger conversations. So in terms of like, what can you do? If you want like some of my favorite ones for the individual, I think one of the things that behavioral scientists shared this with me, and I have used it. I think it was life-changing for me, to think about your calendar, your day-to-day calendar, the way you schedule yourself. Again, if we live in this overwork kind of, culture, and we value, like, oh my God, look how busy I am. We oftentimes will cram our calendar as if it were a busy, just like a pantry, just shove it full of stuff, and back-to-back meetings, and go, 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 go. And then you get exhausted. And by the end of the day, I can't, there have been so many days that I'd be like, I know I was busy. I don't know what the heck I did today, And so this behavioral scientist said, think about your time and your calendar less like that pantry that you need to cram full of stuff, and more like an art gallery. So, take the time to really think about, what is your work? What is the most important thing? That central core. Where do you create the most value? Where do you derive the most value? What kind of part of your job makes your heart sing? And then organize your time around that. And then make sure that when you've got something, schedule it in your calendar. It's amazing, again, how many people that I've spoken to, they're like, I have this big thing to do, and they never put time in their calendar. It just assume it's going to happen, and it doesn't. And that's often what can lead to overwork as well. So put that most important thing in your calendar, schedule it, and then make sure that there's white space before it so that you can prepare. And then there's white space afterwards so that you can digest, so that you can synthesize, so that there's next steps that you can take right then, and then very carefully, mindfully choose the next thing to go to. So I think that's, sort of for an individual, to me, that's been a very powerful push back against overwork. And then if anybody ever questions, like, well, why aren't you running around? It's like, look at all of the things that I have done. Look at what I've been able to accomplish, or look at my output. And I guess that's what I would say for managers in the business side is begin to shift from valuing input, long hours, presence, and shift to valuing output. What's the result, the performance, the actual impact of what you're doing, because that's going to create more value regardless of what your job is. And then, in the larger cultural sense, we all need to work together to create better policies and better norms that enable us to live those good, high quality lives where there's fair work, fair wages, fair hours, reasonable, schedule control, all the suite of stuff that you work on at Aspen and that we work on at the Better Life Lab, paid family and medical leave, affordable care infrastructure, all of that. That's going to require all of us to understand the story about why that's important, the narrative about why that's important, and work together to make that happen on the state and local and national levels.